Let me announce what we're doing. Okay.
And I could just click on the policy, right? So I could show the policy, or you have to click on the shared. Shared person. No, that's not, you can click on select the tab and it's shared.
There we go. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Gresham-Barlow Board of Education Board Policy Committee meeting. This is not a quorum meeting. This is a meeting of the board that we go over the policies and report back to the board for adoption. And we have several policies that we're going to go over this morning. I think these are all first reading. We haven't had these in yet. So we've got 5 of them in attendance this morning. Myself, Chris Howard, board member Myra Gomez, Tracy Klinger, and a support staff. So thank you. Let's just get on.
Okay.
There, yeah, policy meeting on Friday.
So, we've got 5 policies today. Like you said, all of them are, this is our first, look at them. They all have pretty language changes that are pretty, driven by legislative stuff and policy stuff from others. So I think we just want to go ahead and just kind of work through them. We did these first 2 have implications for our human resources department. So we did have our staff member that deals with leaves review these to kind of support our conversation. She has a couple of recommendations, pretty minor things. So I think we can just kind of work through from the top and go from there. So we'll
And a
start
lot of this
sick time.
is like you were just saying, it's because of what they did with the Oregon change. And so it's not a lot of stuff that we actually have input onto. And I
Right.
recognize some of it from what we just recently put into the contract. And on the, we're starting bargaining for classified, is that this year or
In the
next
fall.
Okay, so the
November.
25-26 school year.
Mhm.
So if there's anything that's in here that's not currently reflected in their contract, it would default to policy and state law.
Yep,
Okay,
and then we
Okay.
clean up their contract
gotcha,
in fall.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Kind of what we did with license before, because it
Mhm.
came into
The
effect before
timing
we've
of
done.
it. Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
So as we look through this, one of the things from, our HR department was a recommendation to put Oregon sick time as the title,
Oh, okay.
because it is based on Oregon. And I I think that's fine, and most of our policies are driven by something from the state, so.
So sorry, I was in the shared drive because I printed all this out from the note, but is this actually in our shared policy committee?
On the
So
chart,
it's linked in the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet looks like this, Chris. Policy,
Okay, where is that at on my thing? Because I'm in the drive. Oh, sorry. I usually don't use this, but I thought I would try and do it. Normally I print it all out, but I thought I'd.
okay,
I'm in the shared drive. Oh, this one right here. Okay, I just didn't go far enough down. Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause
and then
I-
you'll have to just scroll.
Okay.
I think they're alphabetical, so you can just scroll down the sheet.
Yes.
Is it's.
and Noel didn't have
Yeah.
concerns about like the time on this. Yeah.
Oh, that's why, because I have.
Yeah, I do that too. Like, so depending on the screen, is that.
Right. Depending on how far away I need to see it. Okay, thank you. Make sure she gets an extra donut today. All right, thank you. All right, so the first one. So they're not in. Are they
It
in?
might be sorted in, have they reviewed order?
Oh, okay, I don't know, because this is not definitely where we are, sorry.
I don't know.
It's in the spreadsheet. I just wanted to see it on the spreadsheet just for future, because I usually go into another place to find it.
So what
and-
other thing is, so it's in the 21-22 policy.
Oh, there we go. I didn't see that at the
We got
bottom.
24-25.
Got it,
And then
okay.
it should be alphabetical.
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, because then some of them I want to look at and go, did we already look at that one? Okay,
Well, and that's what's impressive about this, the spreadsheet, like it's like, wow, we've done a lot of work this year.
right, right.
All right, just in time to get another batch of policies in April.
And I really do know how to use spreadsheets, but why am I not? Here, I'll just use the mouse. Okay,
Yeah, sometimes the Chromebooks scroll off, like my daughter scrolls opposite from what I would do.
got it. Oh, yeah, well, no, here we go. I got it. Okay. All right, I guess we're done. Okay, I got everything to work. We're out of here. All right, thank you. Gracie, take us away from all this.
All right, so, I mean, there's just some kind of cleanup language, it looks like at the top. And some clarification in that third paragraph around the 91st calendar day. So I think that's all pretty standard.
Okay,
There are brackets in the fifth paragraph.
So that 91st calendar days, that includes weekends, it's not like weekdays, right?
Mhm.
because calendar, yeah, it's
Calendar.
weekends, holidays, any of that, just straight up days.
26th, first, yeah,
Okay.
on the 91st day of.
And were there training sessions that were given, or at least information given to staff as Oregon was rolling this out, the changes and stuff? There have been plenty of notes and things that have gone out to them.
Yeah, there's updates that go out like in our insider, our HR
Okay.
updates and some of that,
Okay.
and whether or not people
Qualify or what qualifies or how
want
to
to read
use.
the updates is where I was going.
Okay, that too.
But I mean, what tends to happen is when people have a situation or a principal is hearing of a situation, they refer that person to Noelle to help just walk through
Perfect,
all of it.
perfect,
Yeah.
okay.
She's so knowledgeable.
She
is.
she is great. Okay.
So that fifth paragraph, Noelle didn't share any concerns about that accruing no more than 80 hours of sick time
Okay.
and using no more than, so I would say that we would accept those brackets.
Okay,
The paragraph after that, the last sentence feels a little weird to me. So when sick time is used that we asked for an attestation. She did not mark that as a concern, so it must be part of what we do.
yeah,
Maybe that's just via email. I don't know what that
Uh-huh.
looks like,
well, yeah, the form is signed. And
but
submitted.
it's when we're using sick time to
Mhm.
support families, so
Mhm.
we can double check that with her, but
Mhm.
she didn't mark it as any kind of concern.
Okay.
I would say we move forward with that, but then maybe just do a quick check,
Uh-huh.
Cindy, to see what that looks like. On page 2.
And so in that first paragraph, is that mostly the district, doesn't have to every time, but if there's a pattern of sick leave use, they can request.
And if someone's out more than 3 days,
Uh-huh.
we can require that
Okay.
verification.
Mhm.
Any questions about that part?
Mhm.
In the second paragraph. Noelle recommended that we strike OFLA.
Okay. Because
I-
it's not called that anymore.
That's my understanding. And I think the timing of when we got these policies updated, which we received them in November. And
Mhm.
Noelle was referencing some changes that she was double checking right now.
Okay,
So I think this is the most up to date is with her recommendation.
So it also mentions Oathwell on the first page, so we need to strike that as well. In that bottom paragraph.
I would think so, so we'll check on that.
okay. Cause that kind of went away, it became this other
Right,
program, right?
yeah. Keep feeling that.
And at the point that this is going into. As a policy. No one would, there wouldn't be people that were necessarily out on Oakland, it's already changed. the laws already changed,
Right.
okay.
Right. So the rest of it, I mean, there's a few leaves mays instead of wills.
Mhm.
Um. So in that next larger paragraph. There is a little footnote just in terms of the ORS that it references.
Right,
So that wouldn't actually remain in the policy. That's just a note for us.
and it's interesting because it's asking advance notice. 10 days prior to when it's being requested. So you're going out for surgery or something
Mhm.
that you know, but then the ORS says not to exceed 10 days, so you can't tell them 15 days ahead of time that I'm gonna go.
10 days prior to requested sometimes. To exceed 10 days.
Or if they got the footnote.
We may not be able to require it 10 days ahead, but oftentimes
Okay.
people do.
Oh, so we
give notice.
can't say,
It's
you've
not
gotta give us.
required.
That's how I
10
read
weeks.
it.
You've gotta give us 14 days.
Yeah.
The most we can ask for is 10. Makes
Mhm.
sense. Okay, thank you.
You know, with paid leave Oregon, you can't apply earlier than 30 days ahead.
Okay.
Cause I tried to when I was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, nope, it has to be within 30 days.
She wanted to make sure you were gonna. The baby, we didn't know how long the baby was gonna
Trying to get everything set up ahead of time, but.
Yeah,
And then there's a bracket, and is that an optional for us?
that is an optional and I would highly recommend it.
Okay. Okay, okay. Even though it's available through the state, they still have to let the employer know what's going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I'm referencing more that, there's a bracket. In the, almost at the end, and then around the discipline of an employee. Those are the two that I think we need to be sure that we are able to.
Right, okay. Okay. Okay,
So accept all those brackets and
okay.
is there anything else? Under yellow, I safely. So the other note that she added is that footnote. Where it talks about we cannot require verification or certification to explain illness related to domestic violence, sexual assault, harassment, bias. That part, that's covered under pay leave Oregon as safe leave. So there's a designation for those
Okay, okay.
situations that's referenced as safe leave in there.
I remember we read that a couple of meetings ago. Didn't we read something about, it was a policy about.
Is it in our domestic, is it in our
Remember.
Oh, there we go,
violence?
or the harassment.
Yeah, the
Yes.
harassment.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's probably in
That
there.
makes sense.
Okay,
So,
all right,
I think we could just double check that last bracket on the front page.
yeah,
With Noel and that OFLA that's in that same paragraph with Noel.
okay.
And then we would be ready to roll it forward.
Okay.
To.
Okay.
A work session.
Yep.
Are we gonna try to put these on next week's work session if we ask them?
I don't know what else is already on the meeting for next week.
Could.
It'd be kind of nice
To
to,
be kind of caught up a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah, because
and maybe
otherwise
there's
we're
only
looking at
one, maybe
April.
there will be five.
Yeah,
See.
okay, yeah.
Just
let's
keep
do
us
that.
on that.
Okay,
And that's like this one's pretty straightforward.
okay.
I think the next one will be similar. I'm just looking real quick at Noel's notes. She doesn't have notes on this one. Just the PLO at the beginning, but that's struck, so. Um.
So that first one, it just has a footnote
Mhm.
that paid leave Oregon is not the actual thing. That it's the paid family medical leave insurance. And paid leave Oregon is just who administers it. So when people request leave, they're not requesting leave. Paid by paid leave Oregon. Right? Is that what that's basically saying?
Need clarification, because they were referring to it as before.
Yeah, yeah.
And in their advertisements on. It's not commercials on
Mhm,
TV about it.
mhm. So the department is paid leave Oregon, the substance under the department is the paid family and medical leave insurance. Okay,
Well, Pay the Oregon is the program
these the program,
under the
yeah,
employment department.
yeah, yeah, to administer. Mhm. And. So they updated the,
So added the foster child language.
right,
Um. Some clarification on 2B.
mhm. They just gave more explanation for it.
This isn't substantive, but shouldn't that footnote 3 come at the end of that sentence?
Yeah, it's in it is in a weird spot
3 at the beginning,
after child.
after 1B to effectuate the legal process.
Yeah.
The little 3 is at the beginning of the sentence, at the end.
Okay.
Oh, I see right there. Yeah, no, that is kind of weird. It would go.
So any other questions on page 1?
I don't think so.
On page 2, G, the domestic partner,
Mhm.
do. What determine, maybe I missed the domestic partnership, but does the employee have to submit some type of evidence or something to show that it is a domestic?
I'm not
I remember
sure.
hearing something like that.
I know it's in our contract language, which is from somewhere, but I don't know where that's defined.
So they think it needs to be included here,
Because it doesn't show up in any other place. It references on the first
like,
page.
to define what a domestic partner is. The 50% of the time or.
Yeah, because
somebody
on
who
the,
lives there permanently, you know.
Right,
that kind
yeah.
of stuff.
because on the first page under family member, it has the child
Yeah.
of a domestic partner.
We can check with Noel about that.
But at the same time, they're not, I mean, it's listing family member as all of these people.
Yeah,
Right, right.
And they're not making you say, like, prove that it's your child or prove that it's your
yeah,
spouse
that
or
it's-
grandchild or grandparent.
Proof that it's, because I thought there were
I
things
thought they were
like,
just defining that
yeah,
Well, let me.
these are what qualifies as a family member.
because it even gets into the grandparent's spouse or
Yeah,
domestic partner.
yeah.
There's a lot of.
Or step siblings.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't have any problem with that.
I just wanna know what the
Right.
definition is.
Define.
But that was why I was like, well, if you have
Yeah.
to for that, wouldn't you have
Yeah.
to for,
Right, right.
why would you have to prove for one and not all the others?
Yeah.
Um, And then it takes out all the red line stuff because that's. We don't have to call all of that out. That's paid leave Oregon.
I don't think
Deals
we
with
have
all
it
that.
defined in policy, so I don't know.
Okay.
Do we need to, if it's in the contract?
Well,
I think we tried to stay away from putting it in the contract because if something changed at the Oregon level, then the contract would be. We just say that it's
Like a
covered
real
by
bargain.
paid lead Oregon. And then if paid, because we went down that path when they first started talking about this. We had someone come in and talk to us and we were trying to
Yeah.
figure out. How many dozen pages would that add to the contract? And if
Yeah,
it changed,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what, because there's something in there about signing. Where was it? Where it says, that the employee would sign.
oh, that,
So the previous one, an
Yeah,
attestation.
yeah, well, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and then, but it doesn't say anything about a domestic partner, like, is it someone that you have in your benefits in October? Is it somebody that spends more than 50% of their time with you, or somebody that I'm just dating and comes right? Like it goes
Who's
over like.
sharing the rent with me?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Says
what is that?
equivalent of a family relationship. Do we just want to see if no one's here?
Yeah.
And wants to just
Yeah, that's-
Oh, yeah.
pop in and clarify
Okay.
that for us.
Because of this one, the 6 on 1 is requiring you to
Yeah.
sign something
Mhm.
to show that.
But it says
Yeah.
the equivalent of a family relationship, which feels very broad to me,
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So we'll
Yeah.
go see if she's available. And ask about that. This is, I also, on number 5 is that safe leave.
uh-huh, I
That
see
was
that.
Yes, I
referenced in
saw
the other
that.
Yeah, I
policy.
saw that. Okay.
So the serious health condition. That big strike became a shorter description at the top of. it.
Right, instead of all of them.
Okay.
you want me to text her?
Yeah, just, does she have a definition of?
Domestic.
And if not, then we can follow up later.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, it does have on that page, on page 2-4, the individual related by blood or affinity. Whose close association is equivalent family membership. i.e. Yeah, but then it wouldn't necessarily be a domestic partner.
Individual related by blood or family whose close association with the family is equivalent of family relationship. So it feels very broad.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Health condition.
Okay, then I had a statement, but I'm not gonna make it. I'm trying to figure out how to get insurance. Are we really close buds here?
exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm like, wait, but if I spend more than 50% of my time at a girlfriend's house, does that make me her domestic partner?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if I can get on my kids' plan. We spend a lot of time together.
Yes. Yes.
I've been trying for years to get on that,
Well,
so,
I know I asked, when my dad retired, I did ask about adding him to mine, because he lives with me.
yeah,
So does that make him? my
and you're
domestic?
paying for his
And
care.
I pay for
Yeah,
his care.
yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of it too, that
Yeah.
he's not just a roommate.
Domestic
Yes.
partner is anybody who lives in the house, right?
Well, affinity, it says a family, you know, if that is, where did it just?
Family
say that?
member.
Yeah,
But remember, this is,
equivalent, the equivalent of a family relationship.
but this isn't about insuring them. This is about you being able to take leave to
Yes.
care for
Yeah.
them.
Right, right. Hmm. So she
So,
could take leave to take care of me,
yes.
even if I care about her. And I think that leave is gonna need to be like someplace warm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I don't see anything on page 3 that seems,
No,
seems pretty standard. And then page 4 is just the last little. blurb.
okay. Okay, so it's just how do we make sure that we're consistent in what a domestic partner is? And if there's a definition somewhere, if that's included, since they have the other. Mhm.
Jeff created this cool, it's an AI notebook. He's loaded all of our policy in, so I posed the question, so you can search different ways in here.
Ooh, that sounds.
So I just put definition of domestic partner, and it's not popping up in, I'm not seeing it in policy. So it.
So
must
did he
be-
do that just for you?
It was this
Yeah,
new thing
was
that
it
he
a
started in
tablet?
the
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
and he
yeah,
shared
yeah.
it, but
Got
it's
it.
come in handy. Cause it
Is-
searches our
The OSB
contracts.
search engine isn't the most robust. Sometimes I can search a word that I'm like, I know this is a title
Right,
included in the title of policy, and it's not bringing up that policy.
But
interesting.
he loaded
Interesting.
policy, he loaded our employee contracts, so
Right.
ANSA and OSEA and GBEA are in there, so when I do that, it talks about language that pops up in GBEA or in OSEA, and it
does
all
look
is
at and
pretty
say,
big.
wait, these are two different things, or does it look?
No,
for-
it doesn't do that.
Doesn't do that, but at least says, here's the policy.
Yeah,
here's the
so then you
language
know
for
where to
this.
look. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, I
It
don't know
narrows it
where to
down,
look
yeah.
to find it.
Yeah, which article is it in?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's
Interesting.
handy. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, that was kind of the whole point of use AI to our advantage, you know, use the tool.
Mhm.
We use a computer as a tool, we aren't handwriting things out all the time, so it's just a tool. Okay,
So, we
So-
can get clarification on domestic partner and then I'm assuming we would just roll it to the work session.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Board member standards of conduct.
Oh,
Yeah,
A lot of changes.
no, they had the child abuse that were mandatory reporters and that we need to report it. It clarifies who we need to report it to. And it has a footnote how to report it and who to call.
I think whenever we get new board members, this should be part of the onboarding.
Yeah, yeah,
pretty sure it's one of the ones I. So most of the board, the BV, those ones I print out. For new board members when I do their.
right.
Well, I can't sit there and force them to read it. I can provide it to them.
What you can
We
do is
could
withhold,
do
you can
this.
Yeah,
withhold
no,
their
notice
pay.
I said we, I didn't
Yeah,
just say.
yeah, yeah, we could withhold their pay if they don't read it.
Yeah.
They
Right.
don't get paid, never
That's
mind.
right.
that
No
would
board
work.
dinner next board meeting. So you've read the policy.
Yeah, it would be so this one, I would be curious to know because. There was a new law that went into place last year. And this isn't really reflected in here.
What's the
Um,
new law?
The new law is about circular or serial meetings. That it, and I don't know if it falls under this or not, but it gets into because it included the superintendent as well. If the superintendent can call each board member and ask each board member, what do you think about something? As long as they don't say, and I already talked to a board member, they thought this way, what do you think, board member B? And then you talk to board member C and you say, well, A and B are already in agreement, how do you feel? That's a meeting, that's a meeting, and that got put into law to make it more serious that is. Same with board members, I can call you as chair and say, we're gonna do this, how do you feel? And I can't let other board members know I've talked to you or what you said, because then it's a meeting. And so I don't know if that, because they made that more specific in law,
Yeah,
if that should be, because that one gets tricky. People feel like, well, I just called and talked to people. But if you at all say, and I already talked to these 5 other people, then it implies a meeting and a decision.
So fancy notebook here.
Okay,
I plugged in serial meetings board member
okay,
and there is a policy, it's policy BD slash BDA. So we could look at that, Chris, for that, but it
okay,
says
if
that
that
if,
got updated with the
yeah,
new,
because
okay,
it references a little statement on email communications, please do not reply or forward, that whole thing
right,
is listed here. And then it says the policy also explicitly states that private or social meetings of a quorum of the board for the purpose of making a decision or to deliberate toward a decision on any matter are prohibited by public meeting laws. So it doesn't necessarily get into what you described. in
right,
terms
and that
of
was the new part,
that
that was
piece.
part of what we just heard when we went to convention this year. So, and what it did is it also rolled the superintendent into it, that the superintendent didn't inadvertently create a meeting by not being clear in the conversation with board members.
Okay, so BD and BDA was, can we move to a different policy like that?
In here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it wasn't on the agenda.
no,
Like,
yeah,
okay,
if
I
it's,
just want to make sure.
it's because it's relevant to the conversation to clarify something in the policy or anything.
So, BDBDA,
Mhm.
that policy I just referenced is not on this year's list, but it was an optional policy last year that I don't believe. No, it says we looked at it.
But it depends on when we looked at it.
So it says, I can either read it or.
Last year.
So I don't see that it references what you're describing,
Okay.
Chris. So maybe what we need to do is. See if there is. Special meetings, emergency meetings. Meetings outside.
Because that's where it gives leeway in particular to the superintendent to find out individually how board members, so that if questions come up, they can then be prepared to answer the questions
Yeah.
when it comes forward, but not giving an indication of agreement by board members, consensus by board members, or anything of that matter. So it's
So-
strictly information for the superintendent to use or the chair to use, but not in a way that has it as a,
Mhm. So do we want to, how do we want to approach that piece of it? Do we want to put that policy on our next policy
let's do that.
agenda
Yeah,
to just kind of
let's do
talk
that, just to
through?
go back over it and just see. Because like I said, it was several sessions at OSBA, so
Uh-huh.
it was important enough for them. And again, I've seen recently in the news, a school board that did that, and now they're liable for $7,000 each for violating meeting laws.
So let's,
So I'd
Indeed.
really like for our board to understand how benign that feels,
Mhm.
and yet can have some
Mhm.
serious consequences.
So let's also just, we'll float an email to Spencer. That's just like, hey, is there anything we're missing with this
Yeah.
related to this specific?
Yeah,
And then we'll put that policy,
EDA, right?
yes.
Okay.
and then that one would be part of the onboarding or review by board members each year when we do our, here are some things you really ought to remember. To make sure we don't do this.
Mhm. And then we would bring it to the next policy meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
so then with this policy, do we want to go ahead and move this one
I think
forward?
this one is fine. And. Did I read on here or did we just say it? Is this one? Can we put in it that this policy needs to be reviewed on an annual basis by board members? Or do we keep that out of policy typically? So
We keep it out of, I mean,
it
the
would just go into
annual
our,
basis is the training,
right,
the child abuse neglect training that
okay,
we're required to do now.
right. So this is more just somehow in our stuff when we do our August retreat, our onboarding with new board members, that this is part of the onboarding packet.
Yeah.
Okay. And review for the rest. Okay. But otherwise, I think it can go forward.
It really goes alongside like the board operating agreements.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that's 3 policies
I
already to
know,
go
I
to
know.
work session.
Okay.
Mm. Policy. Okay, compulsory attendance.
Most of it looked like they just changed the word student to children.
Mhm.
Can we change, like, it says persons having control of a child instead of using the word control, and saying responsible for a child? I wish I had control, but I know I don't.
What did we say back in the other, under
It
the
says
FEMLA
persons
stuff?
having control of a child.
Are you-
Yes, persons responsible, like in that first
Persons
paragraph,
having-
that third sentence. And it says it in other areas, but that's the first one. Like in the second paragraph,
Uh-huh.
right after the last, the last purple line, persons
Mhm.
having control, persons responsible for a child.
Responsible for that. Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially, I think, because it said legal control, which
Right.
means different. Something
Doesn't
different
it?
to me, but they struck legal,
Control sounds more disciplinary.
yeah.
And we don't need to go into a whole big. Cause I was looking back at our family medical leave, but that doesn't really, that just says a child that has. The spouse recovered a child of a spouse or domestic. Um. And is that, does that get at the question, well, if you're in a divorce situation where one has custody. It's still your child, but you don't have the custody rights that say, and if they're talking about doing a fine. Would they fine the parent who has custody right and not the parent who is still a parent of that child,
Yeah.
but does not have the ability to demand that that the child go to school? I think that's what they're trying to get at,
The control is
That's
a
still
custody.
but it's a weird,
Yeah.
word, yeah.
Still responsible, even the parent who has custody is responsible for
The
that.
parent who has custody, yes, the parent who doesn't have custody. Are they responsible for the kid getting to school if they are not there in the household?
So then for that would be the third paragraph. Which is a citation for violation may be issued,
Right,
would be to the custodial parent.
yeah. I mean, that's the way I would
Look
read
it
it.
up. I mean, 035.
And so instead of
Because, like,
control,
you know-
I mean, do you like the word custody better?
I like responsible or custody, because even page four, under 5, they do say parent, legal guardian. They use parent or legal guardian, right?
Where is that at now?
That on page 4.
There
number
isn't
5,
anything on page 4.
2-4.
Page 2-4. Oh,
yes,
okay.
2-4.
Oh, paragraph 4 and 5, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
That one says legal
Legal
guardian.
mhm.
Yeah, and they
'Cause
use
that can
guardian
be-
throughout.
Right, right. Cause a legal guardian could encompass the step parent. So,
I just don't like the word.
I don't,
So I'm trying to find in the. We don't reference citation in that 039, 035 in terms of who it would go to.
and do. Well, you're
It
looking,
does say, like, there are different places in here where it says this parent or legal guardian. Is
Mhm.
like, that's parent or legal guardian.
so if we just change that. Parents or legal guardians of a child between the ages of 6
That's
and
fine
18.
too.
If the
That's-
Instead
parent
of
or
saying
legal
persons, just parent or legal guardian.
Yeah.
Because then that encompasses if a grandparent is the legal guardian.
guardian. Okay, so change. Persons having control to parent or legal guardian.
Yep. Does that work for you, Maya?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then persons having. And so then same thing in the second paragraph,
Yeah,
parent or legal,
Right,
parent or legal guardian of a student who is 5 years, blah, blah, blah.
yeah. Okay.
And that is the terminology or the phrasing used in that ORS 339035.
and
It's
then
parent or legal guardian.
the paragraph right before exemptions. Adding that too, because that one just says a parent, so maybe a parent or legal guardian who's supervising the child.
Oh, the one that says a parent who's
Yeah.
not supervising.
Yeah, adding the legal guardian
Yeah.
part to that.
Okay,
So the citation for violation is in brackets. It is a practice we have used in the past. It is not a practice we are currently using. I don't think it's bad for us to have it. It has a maybe issued.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we want to have more conversation about that.
I don't agree with the citations, because we don't have control over kids. Like, I mean, parents drop off the kids at school.
Mhm.
And then the kids decide to sneak out,
Mhm.
like, and it's
But
not, and to me, it's not fair that parents are working. And their kid, and then they get fined because their kids are being knuckleheads.
But I wouldn't think that we would, I think that's where maybe issued that would come up as the parent dropped the kid off, the kid is leaving, so that's on the kid. The one I think that it would apply to is the parent is not making an effort. The parent or legal guardian is not making an effort to get
And
the
that
kid to
applies,
the
I think
bus.
that applies more to the younger kids. I'm fine, if you wanna keep
Uh-huh.
it there, it's fine. I will never agree with citations. I think it's getting more to the root of the problem of why kids are not coming to school and not just saying, Chris, you're not bringing Abby to school, here's a $500 fine.
Right,
Like, that's what it doesn't change anything.
no,
It's very reactive and it's very
I'm
punitive.
gonna hide my kid at that point,
And we don't know what's going on at home.
right?
So, I wouldn't advocate for citations ever. I didn't like that experience. It was like the worst experience as an administrator, but. I would advocate for like the home visits with the social worker and having a
But
counselor.
can we do that if there's not? See, I don't know that we can say we're gonna do a home visit unless we have this. You may have a citation based on,
That's why I said, like, I don't
Yeah.
mind it staying.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wouldn't, I would
Yeah.
not.
that would
support
not
the
be my
practice.
first thing to go to,
Well,
I
no.
would still
no.
support
Ask
But,
people,
but is it kind of like, does that give us the doorway to go in and have different conversation with someone? Why is your kid not in school? What do we need to help with?
so, we can do a home visit anyway, right? That can be
Uh-huh.
part of a separate process. But I do know of a district that we're partnering with as we're doing attendance work, and part of what they do is they do issue a citation. It's like, if you don't participate in this conversation with us, then this would be the next step. If there's
Mhm.
parents that are resistant.
But that's
to
not a
that.
citation, that's a letter, that's a warning letter.
But it's kind of in that, they call it a citation, and I
Mm.
think their county supports it that way in terms of like, if you don't do this, then this is what's gonna happen.
Mhm.
We're just not in a, I mean, honestly,
Oh,
Multnomah
shit.
County and our police department won't do that anyway, so.
I hate the word coming.
But the may in there keeps it open if that's,
Okay. Can you take us off for a second, Sarah?
you
Pause
get
us
your
for a minute,
test?
recess us
We
for a
got it a
second.
while, we got it a while ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just recess us for a second.
Yeah, we got it right before we started.
Oh,
At least I did.
Okay.
Sorry.
Know where the stop share button went.
be there for a second. I thought I'd missed it already, you know, that it had come through and I had missed it, so. Okay, we're back.
Well, we might be able to get through these last two.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna find out about custodial,
We're gonna-
so. It says on there, the one thing on the citation part,
Mhm.
it says develop procedures for issuing a citation. So is there an AR for that?
Um, That,
Because usually we see if there's an AR just to say, yeah, there's one with it, but if we're developing a procedure, that usually means an AR, so everybody does the same thing.
there is on our AR list, it is highly recommended.
Okay,
Um,
so does that mean we have one?
let me open it.
Okay.
We do have something in place, but it hasn't been reviewed since 2015. The recommended changes to it. Basically, in terms of the steps. References an attendance supervisor, which was assumed would be a principal, actually.
Well, I was gonna ask about that too, because it references an attendance supervisor, and I wondered who that was.
So the attendance supervisor will determine whether a parent or guardian has failed to enroll their child and to maintain regular attendance. Will give proper notice, non-compliance notification to the parent or guardian within 24 hours notification of the violation from the proper authority. So we're giving them giving a parent a heads up before someone shows up with a citation. Serve the notification personally, ensure that it includes a statement requiring attendance at school. Ensure the notification gives parents rights to request an IEP or 504, which that's a little bit confusing to me. And then the superintendent or designee will review attendance records. If after review, so a review happens prior to issuing a citation. It references the evaluation again. It does talk about a conference. Superintendent or designee may conduct a conference with the parent and or student.
And some of
Inform the
that may
parent
be-
and student of other resources.
Right,
So, I mean,
and some of that conversation might look different if it's a first grader who's not getting to school versus.
For sure.
11th grader.
and by the time, like, there's a lot of steps and conversations that would have
Mhm.
happened prior to getting to this point.
Right,
So then if we're gonna keep that citation. That sentence about being maybe issued, then I would say that procedure needs to be revised.
yeah, we need to look at that then. So that again, it's consistent, so that one building's not doing it one way and one's doing it another way.
Mhm. Yeah, and that, I mean, that is in policy, and there's even or in the AR, and there is a notice in here. It's a part of it, has lots of strikes in it. There's a superintendent's notice in here, so I'm kind of wondering if we hold on this one
Okay,
and get, like our MTSS folks and
Yes.
building
Mhm.
supervisors
Mhm.
looking at the AR
right.
to see how that plays out specific to that piece.
Yeah, it's social work would be part of that community council.
Uh, who over, works with the liaisons. Okay,
Okay.
so let's just kind of put, do we want to look to see if there's anything else in this one that we want to be sure?
The exemptions are pretty straightforward. It's just using children instead of students.
Yeah.
And then it references the MESD when
Yeah.
students are homeschooled.
Okay. So it's really the cite, those two statements about citation.
And again, so in the AR, on the last page of the policy, a policy 3, 4, page 3, 4, number 10 and 11, an exemption is granted because the parent or guardian of a child is 16 or 17 who's employed or an emancipated minor. Does any of that, does that fall within an AR as well, or do we just leave it there in policy since there isn't anything that's described in how you define that? But even, because there's an and statement in there, so they could be 16 or 17 employed and enrolled in a school, community college, or alternative education program.
Oh, but there's an or before that, so.
Yeah,
Or who is lawfully employed part-time and enrolled in school.
oh,
College or not, so I think those are two
they are
separate.
two separate, yeah. So a student, a child can be 16 and employed full-time. And not go to school. That's the way I read them.
Number 10.
Okay, I would leave it in policy because it's defined.
Yeah,
by a
yes, yeah, that's
Says
just
that right
a,
there.
it's just kind of a. Should kids be in school? Yes.
Right.
But if you're
Unless they're
16 and,
16 and working full-time.
yeah, well, and probably at that point, if you're working full-time at 16. Could be a family business, it could be, some other area that they're interested in,
But
but
that one's coming back to the committee, right?
Yes.
yeah, when we find out about the AR. Okay.
And then the last one, admission of resident students.
And then there's some brackets in there.
Yeah.
Mostly had to do with expulsion.
So the district. clerk. Okay.
So if they're expulsion from something else, not weapons. Then do we want to, and they move out of their district that expelled them? Then do we allow them to be,
Our practice is that we follow through with expulsion.
so we do not, so there's other. Through MESD or other places where students get. Still continuing education during an expulsion period, and expulsion is usually. It's usually not for a short amount of time, is it for like the
Up
rest
to
of
a year, so it could be like the rest
rest
of
of
a
the school
semester,
year.
it could be a school year or it's the rest of the school year.
Okay,
Depending on some of the timing of it,
okay,
it's rarely. Unless it is. Unless it is a weapon. It usually doesn't cross over a summer, but it can.
okay. But it would also mean that they couldn't attend summer school.
Right.
Okay, because that's considered part of the school year, the extra time that we allow students during the summer. So those are
So
bracketed
will
then,
not.
so we will or will not.
The district may based.
So it starts paragraph number 7.
So my instinct is that we would say the district may, based on district criteria, deny regular school admission. And that we don't get into the hard and fast will or will not, to give us some leeway around whatever the situation might be. Because maybe summer school does make sense, or maybe, right?
And probably when this was written, there were far fewer online options. As opposed to either you were in a physical building or you weren't. And so that may have been, so we could enroll them in a virtual program if there was a concern about enrollment in a physical
Mhm,
building,
mhm.
right?
And that's sometimes where Ray and Flex comes into play.
So because we have those options, so I think you're right, leaving May.
I think the May based on district criteria,
So it means, do we have room in our program?
or do we just say May?
Yeah, I'm saying just,
Just so
Right.
no
No, I
for the
wouldn't add.
brackets.
yeah,
Just leave it as May,
May.
and I will double check with John on that. And it'll be a discussion at the work session.
Right. And the weapons policy, is that federal that we have to follow that?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so then that number 9 is the part that we can do online, or we can do Ray, or we
I
can
wonder if I
do.
need to ask,
So regular school admission is different from what's down here.
yeah. So this one, and this one is other than weapons,
Right.
and this one is weapons.
How often do we get cases like this?
I don't know, honestly,
Who takes care of those?
Sarah and John. And the principals, I mean, it's like, this is
Do you get a lot of those now?
not.
Not
Oh,
me,
not
Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah
Sarah
did it.
DeBoy.
Oh, she's
Sarah
really
DeBoy.
good.
Well, I just.
I know.
Yeah, no,
Secretary.
no,
Yeah, she does everything. She
No,
does.
Sarah
know.
DeBoy is like close.
Exactly.
Lots of
Yeah.
Sarahs and lots of Heidis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like you sit in those.
No. Yeah, I'm not part of those.
No,
So both number 7 and number 9 on page 2, we're just doing May,
Yeah,
not the will not, or
Yeah.
based on district criteria.
yeah.
yeah, I wanna check with John though on number 10 with the May versus. I don't know with the weapons policy, but we can have that discussion at the work session.
For number 3 in that first page, it says, may admit an otherwise eligible student who is not receiving special education.
Mhm.
It was 9/21. Because we do, just to clarify, we do, any student who is receiving special education can stay up to 21. Or past 21.
May admit otherwise eligible students. So,
It's not.
so. Like not thinking about policy and just thinking about practice, so
Mhm.
I think about like adult living program that we have, which is specifically for students with disabilities. Provide that support to 21. Is mostly where we educate kids up to 21.
Okay.
So to me, number 3 is saying when there's kids that might not be in that circumstance, but might
Go over there.
can go up to 21.
Mhm.
And where that comes into play for me in terms of practice is Ray or Flex, where we do have some students that are older that might need a credit or two to finish up.
Mhm.
We're eligible, we're able to do that because of that.
Mhm.
Then number 4 says that we can, that if they're not 21. And receiving special education.
Otherwise. Received a regular diploma, or received a modified diploma and extended diploma, or I'm sure they have certificates.
So the difference is
Yeah.
one is a special ed student and one is not. They're both 21. But the one who is not a special ed student, we may admit them.
And number 3 is in order to receive a diploma.
Mhm.
And number 4 is they may have received an alternative type of diploma,
Uh-huh.
and yet we would still serve them.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so number 3 would include multilingual learners.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, it's. Well, that's an interesting thing, thinking about like,
Because I know we've let multilingual learners stay past 18. I don't know if,
Yeah.
what the 21.
Well, I'm even
is.
thinking about like the summer credit recovery stuff. So if you
Yeah.
have a kid that's 20 and needs summer credit recovery, do we?
They didn't turn 21 before the start of the school year.
Right.
But
And so
this is
how
the
does
same-
that work?
yeah.
How do we even like
Uh-huh.
finding those students? And so anyway,
So, yeah.
it
that's my
allows
question.
us to do all of that. What the actual
Yeah.
practice is on some of that, I'd have to check with her.
And I was involved in a student that needed half credit
Mhm.
and it's
And
getting.
we were able to do that.
Yep,
Because of this.
yeah, because of this,
Yeah.
so.
And that's why I'm wondering if we should include multilingual learners,
Mm.
or is it just students who are receiving special education service?
So,
But multilingual learners don't get the
Modified.
different type of diploma. So they would any
They
student
would fall
would
under-
fall to number 3. Yep,
Right.
yep.
and that's not, is that a federal classification? Okay,
Both special education and multilingual
multi-
learners receive federal funding
okay,
or have been receiving.
right, yeah. Should we see that?
Okay, so this one we take to work session also.
Noah emailed me,
Uh-huh,
Tracy, we wanted to,
loop back to that or no?
well, she just said that it says it's considered a family member, that's what it says on the. But it doesn't go into specific everybody's.
So
It
that is
says
the
it's
same
just-
language that's there.
So,
So so
and then in paid Oregon, under the ORS, it just says it's listed on there. The domestic,
okay, so paid leave Oregon and the ORS do not have a specific definition of domestic partner. It's what's listed here is what is in
Okay.
the law.
Okay.
So it's probably pretty. Rough. Okay, so I think we are.
I think that's it, yeah, we just have, the only one we're gonna bring back to the committee to review was BDBDA.
Mm.
And that'll be, on a next.
Future, yeah.
Future, yeah, and otherwise, we have the other one,
Bit attendance.
yeah,
Yeah,
And-
compulsory attendance coming back to committee.
right, right,
And we're
and,
also adding BBVDA
right,
that we can discuss.
right. So the other 4 are gonna go to the board, and they're gonna go to the work session that's coming up.
Yeah, we're gonna try and get it all
Okay.
Good on Wednesday.
Okay.
Look at
Alright.
us. Alrighty.
And then scheduling, so we want another policy meeting on this calendar.
No.
Should we schedule one? I know we don't
Yeah.
necessarily want one, but
I don't want one.
Have more. Do we have
do we have any
more?
more highly recommended stuff that we need to review other than the 2 that are coming back? It's like, do we wait till April to get the next packet that's gonna
No,
come
let's
out and
do
do
the
the poster?
Even if we have to,
Cause my calendar is pretty okay for April if we had to, the only one I couldn't do is April 4th. But otherwise, my Fridays are good.
I'm not available on the 11th, on April 11th.
Okay,
we've done,
so we could put in a tentative one on the 18th just to hold it, and then if we don't need it. It feels really good to cancel it, and Sarah looks like a hero, she canceled the meeting.
If we haven't gotten the next packet. yet,
Right.
or-
I don't, would it be worth meeting just to even do those 2 policies?
I think it might be,
Maybe.
it might be, just so that we could get them then on to, because without re-meeting. How would we
They
know that
wouldn't
they're
move
ready to go
forward, yeah.
to move
And
forward?
there are a couple of other highly recommended that are gonna take some digging in
the ARs.
into the ARs, like,
Okay.
yeah.
So if
So
we
let's
do
schedule
April
it,
18th,
so.
Schedule for April 18th.
yeah,
the 18th.
it's after,
8 a.m.
yeah, so then we don't have actually a board work session until May. No, that's our business meeting. Yeah,
I can do the 18th. Do we want to pick a May date also?
Because the 18th would be right after the April work session. So yeah, then it would go to committee till, or to work session.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could do May, if it's not too, like May 16th as well.
Can you do May 16th?
Because I mean, the 9th could be, but that's right after, that's the same week as a board business meeting.
You said me what?
16th.
16th.
Okay. So you'll send us invites for those, sir? Okay.
Right, so April 18th and May 16th.
That way we, if they do get ahead on some of them, we don't get a bunch that we're trying to deal with. And then we typically, I don't know, we haven't had one in June, but we don't meet during the summer.
Right.
Yeah, because there's.
Okay, I'll get those
Okay.
sent out.
So
Thank you for
we're,
showing me where that was, because I knew I'd been
Yeah.
into it before and I just couldn't remember what section. I was in.
Okay,
All right,
Good to
Done?
done.
I think you're done. Thank you.
okay, yeah.
See you April 18th.